This video addresses problem 20b on the summer assignment. How do you simplify what is called a compound or a complex fraction? In other words, a fraction where the numerator and denominator are themselves made up of fractions, or maybe in this case a difference of fractions. So there are basically two ways of doing a problem like this, and I'm going to show you both ways. The first way is to simplify the numerator and the denominator separately. So I've got, if I look at the numerator, I am really subtracting two fractions. One is 1 over 1. Here is the denominator, x over 1 minus 4 over 9x. Let's concentrate now on the numerator. How do you subtract fractions? You look for common denominator. The common denominator in this case is 3x, so my 2 minus 3x is fine. And the common denominator being 3x, I have to multiply top and bottom, numerator and denominator of my second fraction by 3x. I do the same for the subtracting the fractions in the denominator. This time, the common denominator, though, is 9x. So I take both the fractions in the large denominator here, and I write them both over 9x. It's going to be 9x times 9 is 9x squared, and then minus 4. So I now look at my top part of the numerator here, and I'm subtracting my two fractions, and I can put them all over 3x, and I get 2 minus 3x divided by 9x squared minus 4 all over 9x. So what do I have? I now have one fraction divided by another fraction. And you have been doing this since grade school. You know what to do. That is, the first fraction remains the same. And what you do, you flip the second fraction and you multiply by it. And then you start to see what's going to cancel. An x is going to cancel in the numerator and denominator. A 3 is going to cancel. And you might think you are done. But in fact, you are not done. It turns out there is more that you can cancel. So let's have a look. We've got 3 times 2 minus 3x over 9x squared minus 4. And that denominator should be jumping up and down at you and saying, look at me, you can factor me. Because that denominator is the difference of two squares. And it'll factor into two factors, 3x minus 2 and 3x plus 2. And I look and I go, oh gosh, I still can't cancel. But you know I can. If you have a look at 3x minus 2 and 2 minus x, you will notice that even though they are not the same, there is a connection between them. I can write for the top 2 minus 3x, I could recognize, I could factor out a negative sign, and what will that give me? Negative 2 plus 3x. One more step to go. I get negative 3, and that second factor really is 3x minus 2. And now after I do this, I can see that those factors cancel, and I have a final answer of negative 3 over 3x plus 2, and we are done. There are people, by the way, who will look at the two highlighted quantities and go, oh, they're opposites of each other, and I can cancel at this point, knowing that one is negative 1 times the other. So I can cross them out and put a negative 1 in its place. And then I could go straight to the answer if you like to do that. Okay, let's look at the other method, which is slightly shorter. And that is, so let's call this the other method as method 2. Method 2. I start this, I've got 2 over 3x minus 1 over x minus 4 over 9x. Now, because I have a fraction and I have the rule, I can multiply numerator and denominator of a fraction by the same quantity. I can be very cunning and think to myself, ooh, what would get rid of my fractions that if I multiplied the numerator and the denominator by the same mystery quantity? What would I have to put in there that would get rid of both the fractions 3x and 9x? And the answer to that is clearly, I hope you see, 9x. I multiply numerator and denominator each by 9x. So let's look and see what that's going to look like. Here is my numerator multiplied by 9x. Here is my denominator multiplied by 9x. And I'm going to distribute the 9x in each case. Scroll down a little bit. 9x times 2 over 3x minus 9x as I distribute. And what do I get when I distribute? In the denominator, 9x squared minus 9x times 4 over 9x. And most of you may leave this step out and go straight to the next step, do the distributing in your head. I'm going to get 18x over 3x, which is just simply 6, minus the 9x over 9x squared minus, when I simplify this, I get 4. Okay, I'm still not quite done because I've got factoring to do. In the numerator, I can factor out a 3 or a negative 3 if you're looking ahead. You could have done that too. The denominator factors into the difference of 2 squares. And when I look, I realize that my 2 minus 3x is simply obtained by doing negative 1 times 3x minus 2. So these quantities are negatives of each other. So I can cancel putting a negative 1 on the top, and I'm going to end up with the same